Well, hello everybody, a great pleasure to be here, marvellous audience. Hello to everybody also who doesn't have the good fortune to be in Milton Keynes today, and we'll be coming to that later. Somebody, I understand, spent 2 hours coming from St Albans. Who was that? You see, I wouldn't have started from there, and I certainly wouldn't have started from here from the point of view of the passenger experience, because it's terrible. And I should know. I want to talk about the past, the present and the future, particularly the future. But my goodness me, you have tough working lives. Just think about mine. I recently had to test swimming pools the length of France. After that, I was sent up to Grand Place in Brussels, which meant that I had to, unfortunately, taste various Belgian beers there. Then, worst of all, having to drift around Sydney Harbour being massaged by lovely Nadine while talking nonsense to a camera. So it is a tough life. And it gets worse. I also, as Phil very kindly said, have to do a radio programme every Sunday, which means that I have to be wherever I'm in the world. I have to do the radio programme. And just let me talk you through the technology here. We have a laptop for younger people in the audience. That's like an iPad, only heavier. And that bit of kit converts an ISDN line into studio quality broadcasting. It's fantastic. So wherever you are, that happened to be Egypt just a month ago. So there I was last summer. If I don't do my show, I don't get paid. I don't get any audience. So it's a good idea to do the programme. An example of how the passenger experience needs to be thought of in terms of unified communications was I booked this cruise around the Greek islands because it was the only cruise I could find in August which stopped in a big European capital city on a Sunday afternoon, allowing me to do the programme. Fantastic. So I fixed up my studio and everything. That was all terrific. Couldn't have been better until I got to Corfu Airport when they said, yeah, we had a bit of a problem with the docking, so we're actually going to Athens on Monday now. And, of course, that meant that I had to fly off from Santorini Airport because I hadn't brought my kit because I wasn't expecting to use it. I booked a studio and I managed to fly off, go to Athens and then come back at enormous cost in terms of stress. And that was because nobody had decided to empower the customer. They assumed at Thomson, oh, well, they're on holiday. We'll just tell them when we get here. But you cannot make those assumptions. If you empower your customer, empower the traveller, then you can either accept or adjust, adapt indeed, if you work for Siemens, or abandon your trip. And you then have the power to decide. And of course I would have, had I known, and they knew 48 hours before we got there, no problem, phone up, find an ISDN line somewhere, take my kit along, and it would have been absolutely fine. There aren't going to be any graphs in the presentation today, apart from this one, which shows what's been happening to the British economy. It has been quite a tricky time, as you will know better than me, except, strangely enough, if you happen to be in the teeth whitening business. Maybe we should all consider a career change. So it has been awful, particularly for aviation. The travel industry coming up against messages like that, which is designed to entice people away. I think some parts of the travel industry could do a little bit better in their marketing, and that, to me, has a kind of mixed message. But look, people are still travelling, as I know those of you who work for airlines are fully aware. We want to get the T-shirt. We want to go to the Great Wall of China. In fact, the last time I was there were so many people there, they were building new bits of the Great Wall of China. It's true. So let's just look. I'm going to focus on the aviation experience in particular, because that, I think, is where you have the greatest complexity and where there are the most opportunities for enhancing the passenger experience. It's only 15 years since EasyJet was invented, and that absolutely transformed the aviation landscape, of course, because prior to that, you were told, you want to go to Glasgow from Luton and come back the same day? Well, that obviously, you can't fly from Luton for a start. You have to go to Heathrow or Gatwick, and it will cost you £300. Until Stelios came along and said, no, I can actually make a profit charging £29 from Luton to go to Glasgow, and it has transformed aviation, tremendous thing in terms of the travel experience. It also persuaded other airlines, in particular this one, which you might have heard of, to do other things, to cut their costs, to generate new ways of earning money. Of course, you will have heard that the charging to use the loo is the latest one. But basically, they have empowered the traveller to do an awful lot more travelling, which mostly is absolutely fine. And certainly, if you want an on-time flight, Ryanair is probably the airline to be with. But, of course, travel has a history of making life complicated. That's particularly so with all the very tricky baggage rules in force now. So you get to the airport. This, by the way, has anybody been to Luton Airport recently? It's extraordinary. This is the new, it's not an inflatable stewardess, which was somebody's suggestion. It is actually the new hologram of somebody at the security check. She's on the left, by the way. I'm not a hologram. Who is there to explain the incredibly complicated rules about baggage. But if you take away one thing from here, and of course, unifying communications, when you've got all these different things, it's pretty impossible. But whatever you do, remember that you cannot take small children as hand luggage, even on EasyJet, yet. So there you are. You're on the flight, and this is an example of how things work very well indeed. You are unifying the communications between the information on the flight deck and what you are seeing on your seat back, and that enables you to understand what's happening, which is always very good, particularly I think for anxious flyers, except, and you've got a sneak preview of that, flying with United into Denver, where you discover that you're actually going to a place called Last Chance. If, however, you survive that, then there is the baggage experience. And here is something which I think, obviously, there were one or two pieces of baggage lost over kind of Christmas, or just before Christmas, in all the kerfuffle that was going on. The last time British Airways lost my baggage, which was, I think, going from Tenerife back to Gatwick, they were really, really good. They kept sending me an email saying, your bag's actually in Madrid rather than Gatwick, which at least told me where it was. They then said, OK, it's now got back to Gatwick, and then it's in a car, it's going to be with you in 2 hours, and then 10 minutes beforehand, he's going to be there in 10 minutes. Fantastic. A remarkable installation of all kinds of very good systems for keeping me informed. But I just wish some of that investment had gone into not losing the thing in the first place, which would make life a lot easier for all of us. Oh, my goodness. So, bit of a quiz. Where have I been on this particular journey? Dubai, exactly right. Flying on Emirates. Other airlines are available. This was an example of fantastic, almost unified communications. I've flown in from Singapore, changed planes at Dubai, boarded the flight to Heathrow. Of course, the flight was about 1 hour late taking off. It was a hot Sunday afternoon. They had to take some cargo off because it was so hot in order to get the takeoff weight right. So we flew to Heathrow, arrived an hour late. We then went to this strange part of the airfield which I'd never been to before. We sat there for 10 minutes, and the pilot came on the PA and said, OK, the good news is we're in Heathrow. The bad news is we are not staying here. Unbelievably, they had taken the decision in the duty office in Dubai that they would not be able to get into Heathrow and out before the curfew, which, as you know, starts at midnight. So they had moved all the ground staff, all the passengers around to Gatwick, because that doesn't have the same curfew. And that's fantastic, except they forgot to tell the pilots. And so there we were, not knowing where we were. Well, we knew we were at Heathrow, but then we had to fly to Gatwick. They didn't have the staff to unload us there. We had to waited on the ground for an hour, refuelled, flew to Gatwick, and the pilot said, we'll be landing in Gatwick in 15 minutes' time. Ha ha. The aircraft before us landed and had a problem with its undercarriage, blocked the runway. We circled for 45 minutes before we landed, and apparently I found out later we were 2 minutes away from being diverted to Manchester. Of course, Birmingham Airport would have been much more convenient for everybody, but there we are. So, assuming you do land in the right place, there's all kinds of mixed messages for the traveller, which we have to find some sort of way through. If you're in Casablanca, trying to get to the airport because you're late for your flight, well, good luck with that. Luckily, in Cairo, the signposts are not too confusing these days. This is just a very straightforward road sign. It's also, and I have checked, the most confusing road sign in London. There you are, you're driving along and you think, oh, I'm going to Kensington, I'll turn left. The first left-hand turn will take you into the goods entrance for Kensington Palace. The second turning is a coach park. The third, fourth, fifth, sixth and seventh are vehicle entrances for the Russian embassy. You don't want to go there. Then you have the Kensington Gate, which is where all the embassies are, the in and the out. So that takes you to, I think, 10, and then a couple of entrances for the Czech consulate before you get to that. It is so important to get your signposting right, whatever medium you are in. And anybody want to take a guess as where we are now? No, that's well, somewhere which we became increasingly familiar with. It's actually in Iceland, where they have fantastically effective communications. They've got very limited infrastructure, but they have created something which looks like the underground map. However, it actually combines all the buses, and so you just think, oh, I could hop round to the Blue Lagoon while I'm waiting for my flight. Because after all, you could be waiting for quite a long time. Eyjafjallajökull, I learned to say. Yes, otherwise known as the volcano in Iceland that caused one or two problems with air travel back in April. I happened to be actually on holiday in Norway at the time, and you didn't actually need to be able to speak Norwegian in order to realise that there was something quite serious going on. So I went away as an airline passenger. I came back as cargo, and I strongly recommend the experience. It was really interesting, except you end up at Immingham, which is, can you believe it, the wrong side of Grimsby. I didn't even know till I got there that Grimsby had a wrong side, but it does. Very interesting on board experience. They do actually have a library on board, including this particular set of volumes, which is quite exciting and interesting. And of course, if the volcanic ash didn't get you, the BA strikes might. It is the most extraordinary labour dispute in the history of UK aviation, probably the entire UK travel industry. The latest twist yesterday was that the union announced that it's going to have another ballot, which will be the fifth ballot that they have conducted, because there were flaws in certainly the last one. This has been going on, this is the third year that we have had possible problems from BA. And I imagine that one or two of you might be slightly uncertain about what happens when BA goes on strike. What could happen to your flight to New York, for example? Well, the answer is nothing. Your flight absolutely will go ahead because they have guaranteed that. If you're going to Naples, you'll be fine because that goes from Gatwick. It's only European and domestic flights from Heathrow which could be affected. But it's interesting that British Airways have not properly communicated that message to everybody, and of course many people are still not booking because they are unaware. Every week I get people calling up the radio station saying, I'm going to Las Vegas, I'll book Virgin because I'm not sure BA's flight will be going ahead. It will be going ahead whatever else happens. And then anybody notice it sort of snowed before Christmas a bit? I know some of you have would you believe, and this is fantastic, a bit of unification, Birmingham Airport, people are trained to drive snowplows even if they work in IT. They're trained to frisk people even if they work in IT. That is the sort of unification which I think shows a lot of willing. But from